Hi, this is Roger Persaud, author and speaker, trying to drop some truth on you today about some of my favorite people on the planet, the Osage Indians. Now, the Osages dominated the Central Plains of the United States. They were in that region since 700 BC. The leaders of the Expedition of Discovery, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, they encountered the Osage Nation. Now, they were very impressed. The Osage Nation helped them navigate the new territory and find that route to the Pacific that they were in search of. They were so impressed with these people, they mentioned how sophisticated they were to President Thomas Jefferson and suggested that he invite them to the White House. And he did. They went to the White House not once, but twice. That didn't help them that much. They still lost hundreds of millions of acres of the land that they possessed. So they went from being at the top of the chain down to nothing. But they were a very resilient people. They looked at the new ways and they started to figure things out. Now, what they were getting for their land, and this was part of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, put into law by President Henry Jackson, and they figured out how this thing worked. They were getting IOUs and promises of protection from the U.S. government, and that didn't amount to much. So they went back to the government. They said, take these IOUs and buy land from us, from the Cherokee. They selected the worst land that they could find. I'm not kidding. The land was called the Black Hills. It was rocky and craggy, and it looked as though nothing would grow there. But that's the land they wanted because they knew it would be the least coveted. Now, what they also put into the law is that even though the land could be sold, whatever was below the land belonged to the tribe and could not be sold but only inherited. This would prove very interesting in the quite near future. Soon, oil was discovered in Oklahoma, and a lot of it was in Indian territory in Osage County. The Osages rose to prominence once again. They quickly became the richest people per capita on this planet. Yes, folks, one American citizen was worth $300. An Osage Indian was worth 3,000. But since the land could be bought, but not the mineral rights, people started moving in, marrying Osage Indians, and murdering them. There was a series of murders. There were over 600 murders. Most of the murders were Indians, so nobody cared. But a few prominent white people were murdered. If they tried to advocate on behalf of the Indians, there was something else the government was doing called the guardianship program, which was nothing but ripping the Indians off. The guardianship program was horrible. An Indian had to be at least 1% white. If they were more than 49% Indian, they were not allowed to handle their own funds, but were put into a guardianship run by the state of Oklahoma. The murders were going unsolved, and there was no FBI at the time. There was something called the Bureau of Investigation, and that was dissolved after the Teapot Dome scandal. The government hired a young lawyer, J. Edgar Hoover, an ambitious young lawyer, and he would use these 600 Osage murders, the investigation of them, to create what is known today as the FBI. Yes, folks, the Osage murders created the FBI.